Okay, the second stage in the decision making was evaluation of alternatives. Technology enables you access to a great degree of evaluative information by either on one single platform making all the alternatives and their ratings on different criteria available. Therefore, there is a far higher extent of available and usable information. So while you remove the non-usable information, you would never be able to get that kind of information. So that's where technology is a huge enabler. This is an Indian study which shows that upwards of 61% people in India, and this includes rural customers, when they're buying consumer durables, where they're spending a lot of money, like a refrigerator or a car or a home, they actually look at the company websites, try to compare, and so on. So, in terms of evaluation of alternatives, we look at alternative comparison on the web. Okay, this is a question I was asking you. What is an evoked set? When we, let's say, take a non-food example, when you are trying to change your toothpaste, right? You will choose from among the brands being available, but do you look at all the brands? No. So there is something called an availability set. Within that, there is a set that you don't consider at all. You say that I've got negative information, so this is out. That is the inert set. So the set that you actually consider for your decision making, maybe 5 brands or 6 brands, that is called the evoked set. The question I'm asking you is, because of technology, are evoked sets likely to be smaller or larger? Because you have information on so many brands, so many possibilities, and so on. So, are your evoked sets likely to be smaller or larger? Yes, no? They will initially be larger, but as you get more information for alternative evaluation and choose your criteria, you can weed out the brands and do it fast, right? Online and reviews and ratings play a huge role. Again, this is also only because of technologies that you can now, sitting on your table or even roaming around on your mobile, actually access people's ratings of products, services, places, locations, and so on. Okay. And therefore, social media plays a huge role in confirmation or disconfirmation. It also, therefore, forms your expectations. Before you visited a particular place, because of your exposure to and being able to vet so much information, you have an expectation of the product or service even before you have visited them, right? So, before your, what is the role here? If the expectations have been built too high, even if the product is good, you will feel a sense of dissatisfaction. Therefore, when marketers are using social media, when marketing is, especially in case of services, it is always better to under promise and over perform. This is a basic truism. When educational institutions advertise themselves, they go on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, and so on, and they're talking about placements, they're talking about the consultancies that the organize. The student comes in with stars and buggles in his mind, and then he finds that when his own internship is being planned, he's not getting as. So if all that hype was not created, he would have actually felt reasonably satisfied. But because that, so what you've done is, as a marketer, you've actually demarketed your own product. So in services, especially financial services, insurance services, investment services, medical services, the idea is to under promise and over perform. If you over promise and underperform, you've actually created a huge band of dissatisfied customers, even though the product has been reasonably good. Okay. Once the evaluation has been done, you then make a purchase decision and go into the act of purchase. How has technology changed your purchase behavior? I asked you that question. How many of you actually physically go to stores to buy? How many of you actually physically go to banks? How many of you do your payment transactions by actually handling cash? Now, all of that has actually changed. The first is store versus online buying. A large percentage of our buying is now online. Again, bill payments. I mean, there were times in each month where you used to say आज से सारे billing pay करना है. Today you don't do that. You actually go into a payment service and pay every bill, be it your DTH, your water service, your whatever. So all of that is now taking place through online shopping and buying. Therefore, what is the focus? Focus is on convenience and efficiency rather than on enjoyment of shopping. Please remember, shopping at one time used to be an enjoyable uh, social behavior. You know, women in the neighborhood getting together, boys getting together, let's go and find out the new brands of shirts or t-shirts or whatever. Today, we do it as a social activity from time to time, but largely because there is so much of saving of time, there is so much of browsing done, you are also relating to people's comments and so on. The, the convenience and efficiency has, and there's socialization versus all of that. We still like to go to a movie with friends, but there are times where you want to sit down and just stream a video on Netflix or Prime Video or whatever, right? So this is the change that technology has. This is something I don't need to explain. All of us are very familiar with that. Frequency and timing of purchase. I remember when I was growing up. I also remember when I was setting up my own new family. Every time that you'd be monthly purchases of provisions. We used to go sometime and say, let's go, because you have to physically go and buy things. So the frequency was month per month per month. Uh, there were the families which used to stock on grain or rice or whatever at certain times. Today, what has happened? You can buy anytime, anywhere, right? Therefore, people don't stock anymore. The role of the home store, जो स्टोर होता था घर में जहाँ पे सामान स्टोर करते थे, उसका that role has become smaller and smaller. You actually buy your things. It's sort of a zero inventory kind of a thing. You immediately buy whenever you, because there are providers who supply in 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, right? Therefore, frequency and timing of purchase have completely been impacted by technology because of the availability and the ubiquitousness. But please remember, these things are more apparent in metros and mini metros. If the service are not as ubiquitous in smaller towns, therefore they would still need to go a weekly or whatever, but the frequency has been majorly affected, especially in busy metropolises and busy business centers. Okay, because of this online access to materials and price competition, is deal prone behavior on the rise? What is deal prone behavior? People may have certain preferences, but they buy a product which is offering the greatest deal. Take an example between Ariel and Surf. These are two competing brands of high quality detergents, but from time to time, each would offer a 30% discount or a 20% discount. Because a detergent doesn't go bad, a smart housewife would actually buy in bulk, right? And say, I will take a 30% discount not on a one-time purchase but on 3-month purchase. Why should I pay more? Therefore, because of online this thing and comparability, you can compare things, find out which is, and I know of, because I'm a student of consumer behavior. I know people who order groceries and vegetables and fruit, actually comparing OTPI versus Big Basket versus Country Delight versus what is the product cheapest on. So are onions the cheapest? Are, so that actually have 2 or 3 shopping lists. And so who's benefiting? The consumer is benefiting. At the same time, every provider is also benefiting because of the different deals that they may be offering. But are we actually creating a brand loyalty, or are we creating switching behavior? Again, a question of marketing strategy. So do you rely on prices or do you rely on product quality? So that's a separate question and a separate class. Okay. Now that's still purchase. Uh, what happens after purchase? Uh, Once you have bought the product, started using it, if your satisfaction is there, you are more likely to purchase that product again. You're more likely to recommend that purchase again, and so on. How would you recommend? Earlier, when we interacted with people, we used to recommend. Today, we go onto the social media and say, use this fantastic experience. So you immediately, again, when you're dissatisfied, you don't wait. You come out with your ire, your anger on the social media itself. So, uh, again, this I've already talked about. How do your expectations get formed, especially in services? When the post purchase behavior is being considered, if your expectations have been very high, you get into a dissatisfying situation, even when the product is or service is ready. Diffusion of innovations. Earlier, when there were products being innovated, a new product is coming in, let's say in Western Europe, or a new fashion design is coming up in Paris, it used to take time to cultivate, right? 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, the style would come in. Today, what happens? A new music being released, right? What happens today? The diffusion is so much faster because of technology, right? New styles, new fashion shows become apparent. There is a worldwide ownership of things like, let's say, a football match and the advertising that recruit. So all of us get uh, exposed to new trends, new products very fast. Again, this is a technology advantage, and therefore, you remember the diffusion of technology bell-shaped curve, which there was the innovators, the imitators, the late laggards, and so on. Now that definition is completely changed because technology makes the exposure very, very fast. Therefore, uh, diffusion of innovation is because of technology is a different story. Somebody maybe could sit down and look at the new model of. I said the diffusion of innovation, the old bell curve has changed so much that somebody will probably do a new research and say what is the percentage of innovators versus laggards versus and what is the time taken, right? Okay. Uh, Now sometimes when you purchase a product and you've gone through a purchase situation, by the time because there is the rate of new product development and uh, I mean bringing to the market has become so fast that the situation between your pre-purchase and post-purchase expectations has changed. There are new products that have come in, new service, and this is very true of software. You bought a software for some time, and by the time you are starting using it, a newer capability has come into the market. Therefore, dissatisfaction goes wrong. Uh, your repurchase decision, therefore, would depend upon how technology allows you to service the customer, which is the next point. How do you create touch points? Very true of banking services. You have today a relationship manager who gets in touch with you, asks you if there is anything that you would like me to do. You have just made a new investment. Would you like us to come and advise? So you constantly, they have become what is called their on the call financial assistance. Banks have raised their this thing from being mere bankers to investment advisors to what is called I wouldn't really go on to say in apart from investment, what are your choices in different kinds of saving schemes and so on. Therefore, they want the customer to be there, and this has now resulted in different kind of loyalty because of technology, right? My next point would be when you are dissatisfied. What happens when you buy something complicated and you are dissatisfied? You bought a new air conditioner. Please remember, the higher the time period for which the product will be there, the greater will be your feeling of dissatisfaction if the product is not working well, right? Because you spend money, the product is going to be with you for a long time. If you made a wrong decision, you will be reminded for the next 5 years what a fool I have been, right? Therefore, how do you attribute a dissatisfaction? This is a general behavior of consumers that once they become dissatisfied, that dissatisfaction they want to attribute to somebody. Maybe I made the wrong decision. Maybe that dealer, took me up the garden path. Maybe that information was wrong. Or maybe new products which came immediately after were actually better products. So I am dissatisfied because my friend's house, they're enjoying a newer product which is got greater cooling, is got environment protection also, is disinfectant and all of that. So what happens is that our complaint behavior has changed because of technology. We spread these complaints, but return policy in many companies. All of these companies like Amazon, Flipkart, and so on, all have a return policy, even for clothes. So, in terms of our source loyalty, who do you buy from is also dependent upon what is the return policy like. They'll take returns within 5 days, 10 days, so on. Can you call somebody to pick up, or do you have to go and return, and so on? So this return policy has become a factor in dealer preference. Please remember, the administration of this dealer preference return policy is also technology driven, because you can then contact people from your comfort of your home. Now we've talked about the stages, and all the stages I've tried to explain to you how has technology impacted consumer behavior, right from need recognition to search for information to evaluation of alternatives to post purchase. Very quickly, how have technology enabled marketing and digital native people like you constantly are onto the technology for their buying, selling, and other needs? How have they shaped these variables? I mean, there are a huge lot of variables, and I'm not going to talk about all of them because I take at least 3 sessions to talk about variables. I've only picked up the important ones: consumer perception, attitudes and learning, psychographics and lifestyles, reference groups, and diffusion and adoption of innovation. Since these lifestyle and all I've already hinted at, I will just be talking about these three. How has technology shaped these consumer variables? What is so real and what is so young about, what is so real about Coke and what is so young about Pepsi Cola? Right? We have that imagery in our mind. Whereas these are perceptions that have been created by large scale uh, marketing communication, right? And so when young people are seeing consume, do you see old people guzzling Coca-Cola and becoming real? They are both overrated carbonated water. Nothing to write home about them. But the fact is that we hold these perceptions in our mind. Perception is the organization of information in your mind, which allows you to hold what is called mental pictures of things in your own. So you create your own what is called visual world or mental world about things and people and so on. For example, perceptions about people. Somebody comes into the class, your new teacher, who is a great expert but does not talk much or does not uh, engage in small talk. The first branding that we do is she's very arrogant. She may not be arrogant. She may, somebody who's very knowledgeable, we would say just because she has too many degrees, she thinks whatever. She may be the most humble of people, but the fact is, if she's not into chit chat, into social conversation, into meaningless communication, so that is a perception that you have. Please remember, why is perception important to marketers? Why is perception? We are saying that it's an imagery that consumers hold in their mind. Your perception and her perception may be very, very different, right? But so why is perception important to marketers? Because in the marketplace, decisions are not made on reality, but on perceptions of reality. Whatever perception I hold in my mind regarding what is good, what is bad, what is trendy, what is not, what is boring, what is old hat, what is old school, you decide on the basis of the perception you hold in your mind. Now, how does technology impact perception? Today, we are living in a over-communicated society. Therefore, there is what is called a multi-channel digital marketing communication. All kinds. You can never run away from media. There could be social media, there could be inputs. You're watching a news and there is inserted media there. The news is going on and there is a question coming out. So, just about it. So, consumer perception is therefore being affected by these things. Of course, I've already talked about immersive and interactive technologies where you're shown augmented reality and virtual reality. So you get to see the picture and form your impression. Because of this, because of technology, it is possible for marketers to make individualized communication. So you order something, there would be a chatbot talking to you, coming to you, and so on. So This then forms an impression of good service, which may or may not be true. Brand transparency, we've already talked about. Reviews and ratings and their role in creating perception. Okay. What is learning? How do you define learning? If it was only experience, what do you do here in a class? You sit down and listen to patterned instruction and get into learning, right? So you're right. Experience is a huge educator, but learning is the permanent change in our behavior because of acquisition, processing, and usage of knowledge. Now, that information may come anyway. Now, how does technology contribute to learning? Today, you have ubiquitous, everywhere, access to quality content, and therefore, learning about new product hours, innovations, and solutions takes place all the time. This is already something I already talked about, multiple channels of communication, and we are in an over-communicated society. Mobile learning takes place all the time. You have news alerts, you have information coming in, and you can do it anytime, anywhere places. You don't. So there's learning outside the class, learning about products and services. Consumer learning takes place on an anytime, anywhere basis. Now, and virtual assistants, your chatbots, your people who are coming in with suggestions. Look at Prime Video, look at Netflix, and all of that. The last one is, what is an attitude? Somebody would say an attitude is a point of view. The answer is, the attitude is a learned predisposition. When we are born, we don't have attitudes about whether meat eating is bad, vegetarian eating is good. We don't have those attitudes. We learn that because of our exposure to society, exposure to family, and so on. So any learned predisposition about a product or service is called an attitude. Now, because of technology, because of inputs that we get, we sometimes form attitudes because this is contributing to your learning, and your learning contributes to your attitude formation. So technology has a huge role. This was just a bit of recap. What are reference groups? How do they function? You don't need that. I'll leave this with you. But what I want to talk about it, what are the new and emerging reference groups? What is a reference group? A reference group is a person or a group whom we refer to knowingly or unknowingly when we are making a consumption decision. So, as a girl, when you're going to a party and you want to buy a slightly bold dress, right? When you're buying that, you have the money for it. When you're buying that dress, you always refer to what would my mom say. If she's not there with you, right? She's not around, but you always worry about it. If I get out like this, what would my neighbors say? Now, these are people you are referring to knowingly or unknowingly, whether they are present or not, when you are making a decision. So those are called reference groups, and they become a powerful influence on our purchase decision. Now, reference groups are changing because you have online communities and social media. For example, platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, Instagram, WhatsApp. They've created virtual communities which are our neighbors, our own world, and therefore we get reference from them. Influencers, we've already talked about. Reviews and forums are something that we refer to when we make our decision. So they are a new, untried, emergent reference group. Online forums and niche communities. We all form our football groups. Apple as a company has got its own consumer group, and so on. So we very avidly change notes, talk to them, and so on, and they become a powerful influencer of whether Apple Watch is as good a product as your attitude formation takes place through these reference groups. Again, you have other kind of communities like gaming communities, virtual reality communities. One of the most powerful influencers as reference group is subscription services and membership group. Anytime you go into a buying group, they will ask you to become a member. Open up one service and there. So therefore, your options are stuck, and you become a member to them. It started with airlines. They used to have loyalty groups and frequent flyer programs and so on. Then the aggregators like MakeMyTrip and all started getting these subscription services. They give you fairly good benefits at time. Now, banking services. Again, if you are a longer time member, they give you certain benefit for a Privily customer or Premier customer and so on. So there are variables in extending your membership and going on. So this is how our reference groups have actually changed. So this was the whole thing I was talking about. We are just recapping decision services. We looked at each of them. We also looked at this individual variables, and I did not touch personality. I did not touch. I touched learning and so on. Mike, the question that I want to ask all of you, and please think about it. This is not an answer you have to give now. Is the importance of reference groups like family coming down? Is the uh, influence of neighborhood, social class coming down? So that's it.